Coming up on More Than Before.
Yes, we want to strive to be as efficient as possible, but you can be efficient and effective even if you're making mistakes. And obviously you want to minimize that, but don't take yourself so seriously.
This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everyone, I am so excited for my good friend to be on with me today. We're going to dive into his story. We are going to walk away with some really great nuggets that we can apply in our life. So I'm excited to have my brother on, my friend. He is a father. He is a husband. He is a believer who is devout. And not only that, but he has a passion for leadership and inspiring other people to grow. So I'm so excited to have my good friend, Sean Bacchus. How are you doing today, brother?
Nathan, good to see you, brother. Thanks for having me on. Doing great. Super excited to be here. I know we're going to have a great conversation today.
Oh, me too. You know, I'm excited to jump into conversation because you and I, we met, almost 5-6 years ago, I feel like.
I think it was right? More.
Was it more?
It may have been 2016 that we met.
Man, that was when I did not have gray anywhere in my face or beard.
And that was when I had much longer hair. hair then.
I was very disappointed in you. I'll just be like your mother right now. I'm very disappointed in you that you shaved off those beautiful locks of love that were all over your head. I don't know. You're a good looking guy anyway, so I guess you can make the short hair and the long hair work.
Yeah. Hey, my wife likes it, so that's all that matters. As long as she's good with it, I'm fine.
That's the approval that you should seek, your wife.
Right. There you go.
Well, I'm curious. Let everyone know a little bit what you're doing nowadays. What kind of work do you find yourself in, and what are you excited about here for the future?
Yeah. So currently I have kind of two main things going on. So I work for a manufacturing company as a training and development coordinator. And it's great because I've been working in the learning and development field for a couple of years, but this is the first time where all of the training and development falls on my shoulders. In my previous job, I would pretty much do the same kind of work, but I had a team that I was working with. But now I'm kind of the Superman flying solo. So it's really an amazing opportunity for me to learn, to stretch my wings, to face new challenges. So I'm super excited to be in that role. I've been in the role for almost a year now. So that's definitely keeping me busy. And then on the other side to that, I have my business, Lead to Serve Incorporated, and I'm working with different clients, doing some leadership seminars. I recently did a seminar for SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. I taught a presentation skill course, which is something that I've really been putting a lot of time and energy into. There are so many professionals that I come across who have to speak on a daily basis for their jobs. But as you know, so many people are deathly afraid of it. So really being able to teach that course and help people really have that internal transformation where they understand that, hey, you don't have to be perfect to deliver great presentations. If you look at some of the greatest speakers out there, you can always look back at one of your presentations and say, hey, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. So really helping people get through the psychological challenges of public speaking and then helping them focus on the technical side as well. So that course it's been amazing. I've had a lot of great feedback and a lot of success with it. And I'm looking to continue to push that and get it out to other companies as well.
And if I'm not mistaken, that course that you've developed and that you've been teaching, that is a course that is actually at the same level of a lot of college courses. If not, I would say it's probably better in a lot of aspects, which is pretty amazing considering your background. Do you want to go into that for a moment?
Yeah. So you brought up the word college. So for those of you out there who don't know me, I did not finish college. Initially, it was just because of financial reasons, but during that time that I stopped going to college and where I am now, I really found my passion. Originally, I was in school for pre-med, but the thing with that is I kind of remember sitting one day with my best friend, and we said, what do we want to do for the rest of our lives? Well, we both like science. And I remember we went to salary.com and we looked up the salary for cardiothoracic surgeons. And I said, hey, there it is. We're going to be cardiothoracic surgeons, So I have not achieved that goal. I'm not there right now. But that's really how I chose that career. It wasn't because I was passionate about it. It wasn't because I felt like that was my purpose in life. I just said, let me find something that I feel like I can tolerate that pays me well. So that's not, the path that you want to go down. You want to wake up every day excited to do what you do. So in between the time frame that I stopped going to college and where I am now, I got involved in like a little network marketing. And that really started me on the path of entrepreneurship and just understanding that I can have something that I own. I can work with whatever clients I want to work with and really have the maximum impact possible.
Oh, that's awesome. And if I'm not mistaken, too, your father was in the medical field, too. So was there a little bit of pressure on you to continue the tradition to go into the medical field?
Funny enough, there wasn't. He didn't put any pressure on me whatsoever. I think more so the pressure was go to school, get a college degree. So when I deviated from that path, I didn't necessarily get the best reception from a lot of my close family and friends, understandably so.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, we're taught the traditional thing to do, go to school, get an education, get that degree, and then get a good paying job and kind of just live your life like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I found out through experience that everyone's path is a little bit different.
Yeah.
The time that I spent out of school, I spent serving in church. I had several leadership roles, which helped me get a lot of leadership experience. So it's funny because as I was serving in these leadership roles, I'm essentially building content as well, because I'm learning how to navigate challenging people. I'm learning how to build unity in teams. I'm learning about, leading by example. I have to walk the walk so that others will follow me. There's so much experience that I got living the actual life, doing the work, that I felt that if I would have been in school at the time, I wouldn't have had that experience.
It's really interesting that we kind of talk about this because we're in a shifting world now where there's a lot of shift away from college right now. And I think it's a wise thing to consider what path that you're going down. A lot of young people have been taught for a long time that in order to be successful, in order to make money, you've got to go to college and you have to get a degree. But right now, we're seeing the world change in front of our eyes where people can go and they can get a professional degree, they can get a certification, they can go to a training, and then they can, rather than investing 4 years of general study to get somewhere, you can hone in your craft and you can actually start to make a really good, decent living. And so I think it's really fascinating. Like when we were younger, you and I, going to college, that was the thing because there weren't a lot of entrepreneurs back then that you could look up to and say, hey, that guy did it. This gal did it. And so it's really interesting now because as you and I, we get to meet a lot of people throughout our life. We get to meet a lot of people to say, hey, what is the educational path for you? Because education is different for each person. And education is striving for knowledge and turning that into wisdom that we can actually apply that into our life. So I love that in your story. Where did you grow up, Sean? Like what was life like when you were a kid?
I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. Shout out to anyone here who knows about Southside Jamaica, Queens. But I mean, I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. My parents are from the Caribbean originally. My parents are from Trinidad.
Really?
So even though I'm growing up in America, I grew up in a very Caribbean, West Indian oriented household. There's like a running joke in the West Indian community where if you come home with a 99 on a test, your parents will say, what happened to the other 1 point? That's not good enough.
That's
so there was always this in the house, this spirit of excellence. You want to strive to do your best, strive to work hard. But then I think also a part of that Caribbean background is having fun too. I mean, I watched my dad work hard, but he would party hard and play hard as well. So there's a lot of influence that I got from my family growing up.
And if I'm not mistaken, you actually have some Trinidadian English. Like there's a little bit of language that kind of happens there too. I am curious, when did your family migrate here to the U.S.?
I think in the early 70s is when my parents migrated here. Yeah, they migrated in the 70s, and then they had, I'm going to throw out my siblings' age right here. They
Go for it.
My older brother and older sister in the late 70s, I believe.
Okay.
And then there was a long gap, and then I came And then my little brother came after that. Right, surprise. Surprise. I guess my parents weren't done yet, so,
God was like, no, I think you need one more around the corner here.
There you go. Right, yeah.
I love that. So you were the youngest, quite a big gap within age. I'm curious, how did that play into your childhood? And then also, I'm really curious because whenever I meet someone whose family immigrated from somewhere else, I'm always really curious about culturally the perspective of a family, especially for yourself as a first generation American, right? What is your outlook like? How is that different from most people like your age growing up? Was that different? Because I hear a lot in terms of you work really, really hard. And I feel like that is a very common thing for anyone who's immigrated here to the U.S. Was that a pretty pronounced piece in your family?
Yeah, definitely. Like I remember my dad, he was a paramedic, but then he also taught classes as well. So there's many days I would see my dad leave maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, not get back home till 8, 9 o'clock at night. And he would do that back to back many times. But just he created a great example of, as a man, it is your responsibility to provide for your family, work hard, and do that joyfully. It's not something you gripe about and complain about. Yes, it can be hard to do that at times, but, it really is a privilege and an honor to do that. And I saw my father exemplify that so much as well. So that definitely had a big effect on me.
I love you say work hard joyfully, because that is such a foreign term to so many people nowadays. Because when we think of hard work, we go, oh, it's going to be grueling. It's, we're not going to enjoy any of this. But doing hard work is actually enjoyable and actually fun. So you grow up. Have you always been a good communicator? Were you always a good speaker? Because I always like to think back to when I started quote unquote speaking in front of people, and man, it was awful. I'm curious, were you a naturally gifted speaker when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think I was, but I didn't really care to acknowledge or cultivate the gift. So I remember when I was growing up, like in my teens, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and every so often they would have me go up, or we would rotate and read certain scriptures. And I remember the priest would always come up to me and say, Sean, you've got like a really good voice. Would you ever consider the priesthood or maybe speaking more? And at the time, I'm a teenage kid just trying to have fun and make friends. I wasn't really interested in that. But I always remember those times where even then when I didn't take it seriously, people would always come up to me and say that I was very well spoken. So I would say I had to work at it a lot to get to where I am now. But I've always had that natural affinity for public speaking.
So were you the good young child? Like were you I feel like you might have been the child that got into trouble all the time.
So I was the
secret
child
trouble,
who,
maybe.
So how do I put it? When I was growing up in school, you would always hear Sean is such a great kid. He gets along with everyone. He's so kind and gentle. But at home, I was a terror. I was causing my parents so much stress. And then even as I got into my high school years, I wouldn't say I was a bad boy, but I wasn't exactly hanging out with the healthiest crew at the time. So I did get into trouble here and there. But even that was a phase that didn't last long, just because I knew that lifestyle wasn't for me. Running around, getting in trouble, doing stupidness. Yeah, I was young. I did it. But even as I was approaching like my senior year in high school, I realized this is not something that I want to be doing for the rest of my life. I need to really start taking life seriously and figure out what I want to do with myself. So
yeah,
I had a phase, definitely had a phase.
I think we all have a phase, and I think we're looking for a group of people to fit in with. So we change kind of who we are to adapt to be in an environment where we feel accepted and acknowledged. Like, where did you find your identity growing up? Some people it's sports, some people it's music, some people it's faith. Where did you find identity when you were growing up?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I had an identity when I was growing up. You made a good point about us trying to adapt who we are to fit in. I felt like I would just try to fit in with different people. I went through the bad boy phase a little bit. Then I went through the party boy phase. It was all about going out, getting drinks, having fun. I went through so many different phases. And I would say it wasn't until I came to faith in Christ that I really found my identity and I knew who I was called to be as a person.
I don't know why, but as you're talking about, the bad boy, the party boy, I just see you with like a leather jacket walking in like, hey guys, let's go. I don't know.
Yep.
A little bit of swagger. I don't.
You know what's funny? I was reflecting on it before, and I realized I always had these leadership skills because even in those days, people would follow me and look to me for leadership. But as I came to faith, I felt so bad because, I think God had given me these natural leadership qualities, but I was using it to lead people astray. I wasn't using it to lead them in a positive direction. So, as I came to faith and I looked back and reflected on that, that's one of the reasons why I said, hey, I want to use my God-given abilities to lead people in the right path, ultimately to lead them into Christ, but then also to lead them so that they can be successful in this life as well.
That's so good. I love the story of a good first job. I especially a good first job that you actually had to work pretty hard. I have a feeling, I don't know this for certain, but I have a feeling that maybe your first job might have been rough. What was your first job that you can remember growing up?
My first job was working at Dunkin' Donuts at JFK Airport. And the job itself wasn't hard, but the schedule was brutal. So I wasn't driving a car at the time. I had to take public transportation. So I was getting up around 3:30 in the morning to make it to work for 5 a.m.
Wow.
And then I would work until about 12 or 1 p.m. So, working at Dunkin' Donuts, it's not brutally difficult, but that schedule, even when I was in my early teens, early 20s, that was kind of tough. Yeah.
Interesting. So I'm curious, the interactions, do you recall any interactions with anyone flying out of JFK? Because I would imagine at that hour, you're not getting people that are like you, like people that are maybe just kind of getting through I need to get through this job, make a little bit of money so I can do some other things. But you're actually meeting some people that are, they're flying, they've got meetings. Did you ever meet someone that inspired you of oh man, I don't know what that person does. I don't know what she does or he does, but I think I want to travel. I want to do something like that. Did you ever get the bite of that travel bug from that?
From that job, no. I don't think I got that from that job, unfortunately.
You didn't want to experience donuts in other places?
I didn't, unfortunately. I remember I met Don King
Seriously?
when I was working at the airport. I met him before. So that was cool. But aside from that, I don't think I met anyone that was necessarily prominent or who really inspired me, to be honest. At that early in the morning, people wanted their coffee, donuts, and they were on their way.
Not exactly the most conversational people in the morning.
Right. If it was midday, evening, maybe that would have been better for that. But
maybe that's why I'm always stared at with that funny face from people when we're flying out at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, hey, how's it going? How's your morning going? And they're like, you need to be quiet.
You're
go
that person.
Take your coffee and go to the other side of the airport and away from all of the passengers. We don't want you disturbing them.
And I'm not a morning person either, so that definitely added on to it. I wasn't trying to have robust conversations that early in the morning.
Did that ever shift for you? I remember there was a point when I started getting into the speaking and coaching world where everyone was like, you got to wake up early. You got to get motivated for the day. And mind you too, I also knew get up early, spend time in the Word, pray, all those things. I knew that I would do that. But I'm curious, are you a morning person now? Are you more an evening person? Has that changed at all or shift?
I've always been a night person. I feel way more productive in the nighttime. I don't know why. Earlier in my entrepreneurial years, I did try to shift to being a morning person. Because, you listen to any motivational speaker like Eric Thomas. I used to listen to him all the time. And he would talk about how he gets up 4 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. So I said, I have
to grind.
Got to get ahead of the crowd, grind it out. And there was a time frame where I was getting up 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 a couple of times and grinding it out. But I really struggled with it long term because that's not my affinity. It's not how I naturally am.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I've learned, that as I'm learning from others and I'm growing as an individual, take the advice of others, but then adapt it to yourself. Because for Eric Thomas, that might work. He just might very well be a morning person. You seem like you're a morning person. But for me, I don't know what it is in the morning. I kind of need a little time before I'm fully functional. But in the evening, that's when all the ideas come to me. I can just get into this pocket where I'm flowing with creativity. So I've learned to just adapt to who I naturally am instead of try to force myself to fit into a different mold.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, it's funny because as you're saying that, I was like, I don't know if I'm a morning person. I don't know if I'm an evening person. I think I'm just a people person. Like when I see people, I'm like, okay, let's go. Like this is exciting. We can talk for a little bit.
Yeah.
So talking about influence, who were some of those early influences in your life, and who are some of those influences that came into your life and really maybe shifted your trajectory of where you wanted to go in life?
Oh man, there are so many. I know from a professional standpoint, there's a good friend and colleague who also is affiliated with John Maxwell, Gene Stewart. I remember when I was getting certified through John Maxwell, I remember just walking past her and she called me out. She said, "Hey, where are you from?" And ironically, we were both from New York. And I remember she was just so, I guess, like touched by my story, and she could tell that I was motivated and I was really hungry to grow my gift and to impact others. And we connected, and she has done so much to pour into me, to invest in me, to give me opportunities. She's one of the main reasons why I have had opportunities to speak at the SHRM conferences recently. So she's always been someone who has seen my potential and pushed me in many practical ways to live out that potential. I can remember one specific instance with her where she asked me to be her coach. I was coaching her for a little while, and that went great. And I remember at the end of the session, she had a conversation with me. She said, "Sean, you're undercharging me. You are worth so much more than what you're charging me for." So what she did is she said, "The next time we do this is how much I'm going to pay you." And that really stood out to me because for someone to say, "Sean, you are undercharging me. I'm not going to pay you less than this specific number," that really helped me to understand how much I really have inside of me to offer to others. Because through my journey, I do, and even sometimes now I often struggle with wondering, am I good enough? Am I really as skilled as people say that I am? But to have someone of her caliber with her level of success say that, no, I'm actually learning from the things you're going through with me, that stuck with me forever, Nathan. It'll always be in the back of my mind and in my heart.
There are so few people that will experience what you just described, of you adding value to someone's life and them looking at you and saying, "You're not charging me enough." I mean, at the end of the day, we all walk around with the same type of feeling that you talk about, Sean, of, man, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Am I worth this amount of money? I think sometimes secretly inside we go, I am worth it. Yeah, I'm worth this amount. But then when it comes to actually pulling the trigger to say, okay, I'm going to bet on me. I'm going to go out. I'm actually going to charge for my service. I'm going to charge to mow lawns or to fix alarm clocks or watches or fill in the blank of whatever that is. I think that there's that deep voice inside of us that says, yeah, I don't think I'm worth it. At what point, or maybe it's still something that you kind of wrestle with, at what point did you start to believe what Gene was saying to you, that you are worth it? And how did that shift the way that you showed up in other aspects of your life, knowing that the content that you bring, the type of skills that you bring as a coach and as a trainer really do make an impact? How did that shift the way that you show up in life?
I think it gave me a significant amount of confidence, because when you question your worth, you question whether you're good enough, it shows in your behavior, it shows in your body language. So if I feel like I'm not enough, I'm going to go into a presentation with hesitations, with doubts. But once I know my value and I know the worth of the content that I'm able to deliver, and I know that I can deliver it effectively and efficiently, it really boosts my confidence. So just to even backtrack a little bit, I worked in healthcare prior to this current job for about a decade. I started out working in dietary and food services, very humble beginnings, and then I was able to get a role in our Center for Learning and Innovation, which is essentially our hub for training and development, to keep it short. And one of the classes that I developed during that time was my presentation skills course. So to put it in perspective, at the time, I don't have a college degree, but I have some experience with public speaking, and I'm teaching individuals who have bachelor's degrees, who have master's degrees, some have PhDs. I've taught doctors, nurses, emergency medical staff, so many prominent and influential people that you can think of. And to have people walk into those classes and then walk out and say, Sean, I feel more confident and equipped to deliver presentations. Sean, I'm currently in grad school, and the tips that you gave me helped me with my presentations in grad school. Like, to see people's lives really be transformed and their skills grow as a result of that, I mean, that was really one of the things that boosted my confidence. So now when I walk into any room, I'm not arrogant believing I'm the best speaker in the world, but I know that I have a track record of being able to help grow and empower people. So knowing that is something that gives me so much confidence every time I get in front of an audience.
When you start something new, like speaking and getting in front of people, I think sometimes, we were talking about the fear of speaking earlier. There are so many people that are afraid to get out and speak. They're afraid of what might happen to them if they say the wrong thing or say something stupid. By the way, if you've listened to this podcast for more than like 5 minutes, you know that people say stupid things all the time. And I'm pointing at me if you're listening to the audio. I'm not pointing at Sean, because Sean, he's sharp. He's good. He's got it all together here.
I learned from the best, Nathan.
Yeah, John Maxwell. Darn that guy. But at the end of the day, it does take a point and a place where we have to eventually say, okay, I'm going to move forward with this, no matter what happens. And I'm curious, when was the point that jump for you to jump into entrepreneurship, where you said, okay, I'm just going to put myself out there? And how did you overcome the scariness of doing something new, especially, if you've been in network marketing and you got to ask people and you got to sell something, which, by the way, if you haven't understood this yet, you are selling something to everyone 100% of the day.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that fear of rejection and that fear of what people might say?
I think for me, it was replaced by another fear. A fear of not living up to my potential, to be honest. So hopefully that's a healthier fear. But again, coming back to the fact, like, once I realized from a professional sense why God put me on this earth, I really started to understand. And as I got feedback from people, there are people who need to hear the things that I have to say. So I'm doing a disservice to others by withholding and not putting myself out there. And even when it comes to making mistakes and being worried about saying the wrong things, that's a part of the process. Like we were talking about earlier, you don't have to be perfect in order to deliver great presentations. There are so many times where I've done presentations, and after I've sat back to reflect, I'm like, man, why did I say that? I tried to add a joke. It didn't really work. But then people come back to me and they're like, Sean, that was phenomenal. That was great. I needed to hear that. Thank you so much. So yes, we want to strive to be as efficient as possible, but you can be efficient and effective even if you're making mistakes. And obviously you want to minimize that, but don't take yourself so seriously. Just breathe easy. That's one of the things I tell people in the presentation skills course. I think that's one of the things that from a public speaking standpoint, it really holds people back. They're deathly afraid of making mistakes. And I always use examples of people who we know that are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars to do this full time. And even they might use a filler word here or there. They might stumble over a word or stutter here or there. So, and I use that to say, look, if they can do this imperfectly and still be this successful, what's saying that you can't do it? You don't have to do it at their level, but it doesn't mean that you can't do a great job at it at the same time.
There's also this level of transparency too, that as you're speaking and communicating something, like obviously like what you're saying, you don't go out of your way to, put filler words in and to make mistakes, because you want to have a good presentation. Exactly. At the same time though, there is a level of transparency that comes into play, that the more transparent you are with an audience within reason, the better the reception is, the better the connection is. I'm curious, as you have been married for a number of years now, there's a transparency that comes along with getting married. All of a sudden, your spouse sees you 100% for who you are. Good or bad?
Good or bad.
How has marriage kind of transformed you and who you are and how you show up in your life?
Man, marriage has shown me how selfish I can be. That is a really tough pill to swallow. And it's funny because I've always, prided myself in thinking that I'm a fairly selfless person. But when you come into a marriage and you have, my wife and I are polar opposites. I'm the extroverted, let's go out, let's do this. I want to interact with people. She's very introverted, very kind of to herself, a little more timid
away
than
from
I am.
people.
Stay away from people. She's excited to stay home. I'm like, let's go. We need to do something. I don't want to be home. So naturally, many times we might butt heads. But something that I've had to realize is that just because I don't get my way doesn't give me the right to be angry or to be harsh or to withhold love and affection from my wife. So marriage has really shown me how selfish I can be. It's shown me how much more I need Christ and how much more I need to depend upon him. So it really is a mirror. I think prior to marriage, sometimes in the grand scheme of things, people will paint this picture of you're going to meet your dream person and everything's going to go perfect and it's going to be the butterfly phase. And I remember getting married and I was like, yes, it's sweet, very sweet in the beginning, but it's also really tough because you're now seeing that person more in depth. They're seeing you more in depth. And it shows you a lot about yourself that you wouldn't otherwise necessarily know if you were a single person. So it can really show you yourself. I will say that much. Yeah.
I love that. And I love that as you're with someone and they see that intimate piece of you, it kind of the dream that you have of being with someone that is so sweet and wonderful can easily turn to a nightmare. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that's not to say that everything is always going to be, flowers and roses in your relationship. There's ups, there's going to be downs. But at the same time, what we do with that information is really important. Like, understanding as a husband, like when you first get married, you're like, oh, this is really great. And then you realize how selfish you are. What were the things that you started to do and who you decided that you wanted to start being in your marriage so that selfish guy didn't show up as much?
One thing I tried to do, and I don't really talk to her about this, but I'll try to do nice things for her even if I'm upset at her. Because there might be specific times where I feel like there's something that I want that my specific needs aren't being met. And I try to be intentional about in that moment doing something for her. Because I want to be intentional about putting that selfishness to death, because irregardless of how she performs in marriage, it is my call as a husband to love her unconditionally. I have an amazing wife. She does an amazing job raising our son. She's a hard, diligent worker. So even if I'm upset or she's doing something that's bothering me, being intentional about doing sweet things for her. So I might come home with roses and inside I'm like a little salty, but I'm like, you know what? My wife deserves this. She is an amazing woman. And I need to show her that even when emotionally that connection may not be there.
I love that. And there's also something about shifting the way that you view your spouse of do you see the best in your spouse, right? Because whatever you're looking for, you're going to find. And if you're like, man, my wife is salty today, all she can talk is negatively. When you're thinking that's all you're going to see. And sometimes it's a change of heart from us that we need in order to allow our spouse to even change. And I can relate to that in a lot of ways. Yeah. I want to go back to this piece of faith, because faith has played a pretty substantial role in your life from early childhood all the way up till now. I'm curious, what was your faith in the beginning? How would you describe that? And how has that evolved throughout your life with challenges?
Yeah. I would say so as early as when I was in my teens, I grew up in the Catholic Church. And I think it gave me a foundation for believing in God. But if I'm honest with myself, I did not know God and he did not know me. There was no desire to live for Christ, to honor Christ, to worship Christ. It was just, I go to church. I like the people that I'm around, and that was really it. But as life went on and I was able to hear the gospel through multiple people, like my older brother who was saved before me, I had a good friend that was saved before myself. God just providentially used people to share the gospel with me until it ultimately took root in my heart. And I would say from there, that's when things really shifted and really changed. And I understood that I was created in God's image to worship him, but I've gone far off from that. I was in sin, doing whatever I wanted to do. And the only way to be reconciled to him was through faith in Christ. So once I understood the gospel, that really changed my mindset and it changed everything. And to answer your question even further, how I navigate challenges as a result of that, Philippians 1:6 comes to my mind that, God who started the work in me will finish it. So everything that he's doing in my life, it's to make me more like Christ. Now, I will say that at times that can be a hard pill to swallow.
That's a pill none of us want to swallow that half the time.
Nobody wants to swallow that, because some of the times, just to be honest, it sucks. God might put you through seasons of life that absolutely suck, but he's doing that for a purpose. So knowing that these aren't just random occurrences in life and that this is not meaningless, it really helps shape my viewpoint on struggles and challenges. I'm not perfect at that at all. There are some times where challenges arise and I've got the joy of the Lord. And there's other times where I'm a miserable wreck and I'm like, Lord, help me. So I'm by no means perfect at that, but at least I have in mind, this is the goal that I'm working towards, to be content in whatever circumstance God ends up putting me in.
Oh, that's so good. Now, I'm curious. I love that you bring up those trying times, that they are there to even prepare us for life later on down the road, of something that might happen, something more difficult, another level, another devil. I've heard that before, right? And I'm curious, can you recall a time in the past where it was difficult and you're thinking, man, like I just don't know if I can do this. And as you look back at it now, you go, because of that time, it actually helped me in this specific time in my life. Can you recall anything like that?
Yeah. I was fairly early in the faith, still figuring things out a little bit before I got exposed to entrepreneurship, or actually earlier in that journey. Just financially, things were rough. The job that I was working didn't really pay that much. My credit was just an absolute joke at the time. And things were just really tough financially, but I'm glad that I went through those seasons, because it made me be more intentional about, just financial literacy, for being disciplined as a person. So much about what I've learned about finance, it's not about what's going on with the economy and what policies are in place in the government. It's really the decisions that I make. The reason why I was struggling financially is because I was making poor decisions. I wasn't saving well. I wasn't investing. I wasn't being smart with my money. I was going to party and spend money on this. And it's like, no, you have to really dial things back and be intentional with what God has given you. So that's a time that kind of sticks out for me.
That's, it's really good. The financial literacy piece really hits home to me. I don't know what it is, but I feel like there's a certain age where people just aren't taught financial literacy, right? People just aren't taught how to handle their finances. And kind of going back to what you were just saying, where, you're spending money on a number of different things and not kind of realizing where you're putting your resources. What was that moment where you really said, you know what, something's got to change? And what was the first step that you started to make in order to change your financial direction? And what does that financial literacy look like to maybe the everyday person today that is struggling with debt? They feel like they're drowning. Like what would you say to that person to encourage that individual?
There was a book I read by Darren Hardy called The Compound Effect. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. And in that book, there's a section where he talks about tracking like your habits and tracking your actions. So what I started to do for maybe a month or so, I would track every single penny that I spent. And as I looked through that, I realized I'm spending so much money on crap. A lot of it was just food. It was just,
hey, stop talking about coffee that way. Coffee is not, no.
I could have saved so much money if I wasn't going out to eat so much, just cooking at home, and then occasionally going out and being reasonable. So I say budgeting is one of the biggest things that really helped me, and then learning more about investing. Because, I'm no financial advisor or economist, but, as inflation rises and the dollar loses its power, it's important to have ways that your money can grow even if you're not working. So being intentional about learning about the stock market and all these different things have been extremely helpful to me. And over time, I've learned more and more, and these are things that I do today. So even now, like my wife will talk about, let's go visit some family in North Carolina or visit family in Florida. And my immediate thing is, all right, budget. How much is this going to cost us? Like I'm so night and day from who I was before, because I just understand if I don't do those things, our family financially is just going to fall into a hole rather. So I think budgeting and being intentional about thinking through investing and preparing for the future, those two principles have really helped me throughout my life.
I think that's a huge thing for all of us listening right now, even myself too. As we're going into the election season right now and everything going on, remembering that no matter what happens at the end of the day, you are in control of your finances. Are you overspending? Are you spending too much on those quesadillas? Do you need that extra guac from Chipotle for $8? I don't know how much it is, but I remember the last time we were there and they asked if we wanted guacamole and I said, go for it, babe. And then I got to the end, I was like, how much do we spend on guacamole? This is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
How much is an avocado? I know inflation's high, but this is crazy.
This is out of control.
This is out of control. But there is something to be said about having that awareness of where your finances are. And I love what you say about investing, right? Even if you don't know how to invest or what to invest in, start to educate yourself. And I think that's something that I love about your story is that you are a lifelong learner. Has that always been there, or was there at a certain point in time? Because I know I was not a lifelong learner. I was I know it all kind of guy, which I got to beat that out of me sometimes still to this day. But there was a point where I started to realize that it was more important to ask, to learn, to grow than to have the answers. Was there a point for that in your life where you started to realize like, oh, it is more beneficial to learn than it is to actually think I know everything?
Yeah, I would say becoming an entrepreneur is what really was that turning point for me. One, because just in a practical sense, I knew I had a gift. I knew that I wanted to share my gift with the world, but I didn't know anything about business, about running a business, about marketing, about how to get clients. So I really was in a position where I had to try and learn and just speak with people who were walking and living the life that I wanted to live. But then from another standpoint, just understanding how my own personal development and my interpersonal skills are going to contribute to my own success. I mean, think about it. I'm teaching leadership classes. I'm teaching classes about communication and public speaking. I would be a hypocrite if I'm teaching something but not living it. And I think one of the things that has helped me be so successful is that as I'm teaching these classes, I can draw from my life experiences. I'm not just regurgitating what I read about out of a book or something I heard on a podcast, but I can go back to my life experiences and say, hey, these are some tips on leadership. This is how you become a more confident speaker. So really being able to live it out has been extremely helpful.
Love that. Now you have a young little boy, which is, he is adorable. And yes. I'm curious because there's always a point, I think, in a father's life when you have your first child and you start to look at who you are and you start to realize that they are very much like you in all the wrong ways. Kids are great in that way. Everyone's always like, oh, they're so smart. They're so kind. And I'm like, that must be coming from my wife because they have every single bad trait of mine. What have you learned about becoming a father and as you've been raising your son up to this point in life?
I think it's been another mirror that can show me not necessarily my selfishness, but just ways that I need to grow. And also it gives a reminder to me that I need to be careful of what I'm doing because he will imitate every single thing that I do. So, for instance, like I'll walk up to my wife and give her a kiss, or I might pat her on the butt, and then here he goes right after that doing the same thing. I'm like, dude, that's my wife. Back off,
Back off, boy. Get your own.
Back off, buddy. But it's just a reminder that he is always watching. He's always learning. We sometimes go to the freezer often because he loves popsicles. So now he'll try to reach up on his own and he'll say, pop, pop, pop. So kids learn so much and they pay attention to the things that you're not paying attention to. So it's been a constant reminder for me, be mindful of what I'm doing because my son is very literally watching me. He may not be able to communicate as well as other people yet because he's only 16 months, but he definitely sees and he's learning. So it's just another set of eyes that are on me. My wife is watching me, my son is watching me, and I have to lead by example to the best of my ability.
What's been surprising to you as you become a father? Like, what was the most surprising thing as you've been interacting with him, or even as like maybe something surprising that your wife has noticed in you since you became a dad?
I think it showed me that I need more patience.
Hate that.
Yeah, it's
Can we work on any other value, any other virtue?
Other than patience.
Right.
Man, I remember one time I came home, I changed him, fed him, and he just would not stop crying. And I remember thinking to myself, like, will you just stop crying? Like, I gave you everything you need. Why are you fussing? And then I had to pause and think to myself, Sean, at the time Harrison was 4 months old, like, he's a 4-month-old. That's what they do. Babies cry. And I really had to have an emotional intelligence moment and think through, what am I really frustrated about? Am I frustrated because my son, who's a 4-month-old, is crying? Or am I frustrated about other things, and am I taking it out on him? So that was something that was really an eye-opener for me. I need to be more patient in many ways and make sure that I'm not taking out other frustrations on my son or on my wife. Because there may be days that I can come home from work, I've had a horrible day, and I find that I'm being a little short with my wife or with my son, but it's not because they've necessarily done anything wrong. It's just I have all these other things that have been piling up. So really, I need to be patient and not take out my frustrations on others. That's something that I've definitely realized, being a husband and being a father.
Oh, that is so good. You know, it's funny because as you were talking about that, it reminded me of this morning. I woke up and going through the day, making breakfast, and I hear like screaming upstairs, and I'm like, what is going on? And I go up, and it's my son. The other two are downstairs, and they're completely fine, but he's up there, and he's just throwing a fit. And I'm just like, if you don't stop, there's a consequence that's coming around the corner, and you're not going to like that consequence. And I'm like, what do you need? Like, what do you want? What do you need right now? And he looks at me, he's like bawling, and I'm irritated with like, you're wrecking my morning because I'm trying to get food on the table for you. You are an inconvenience to me right now. What is going on? And he looked at me and said, I need a hug.
Oh.
I was like, garbage.
Yep.
That you make me feel like garbage, my son, because we just don't necessarily know everything that they need. And that's something that I've really tried to communicate with our kids is if you need something, we want you to tell us. Like, if you're upset and you're frustrated and you're just having a hard day and all you need is a hug, just say, Dad, I need a hug. Mom, I need a hug. I just need some love right now. My daughter has said that to me. Well, what do you need right now? Why are you acting out? I just need some love, Dad. And you're like, oh, gosh. Because you know what that means. That means that we haven't, or I guess I should say I haven't been doing that. I haven't been fulfilling that piece of the equation for my kids. Man, Sean, this has been so good. Like there's so much meat to your story. I do want to ask you one more thing kind of before we wrap up.
Sure.
And that's just kind of goes back to this idea of the trials that we have in life. You know, I've said it a number of times on the show before that I think that those trying times in life are the crucible moments where us as raw individuals are put inside, everything gets heated up, and we have to choose to let go of things. I'm curious right now with where you are in life, and this is probably going to be a transparent moment, but what currently are you learning right now through trials in life, and why is that important for you to take the lesson out in the moment and not always just at the end of the trial?
Yeah. I'd say the lesson that I'm learning is that God will always provide for his people. So just to be transparent, lately I've been having issues with my car. I pumped so much money into the car to get it fixed, get it back on the road, took it to the mechanic. 2 days later, the same issue pops up again. So just a lot of back and forth going on with the car. But even through that, I'm tempted to think about how much money I'm spending, and I have to pay to get the car towed and all these different things. And I have to stop and remind myself, thank God that I even have the funds or the money to take care of these issues. Like, God is giving me what I need in the moment for the moment. The moment might be frustrating, but at no point in time have we ever been stranded. You know, we're destitute. It's always circumstances pop up, but God always makes a way and he always provides. Even aside from the issue happening with my car, something was going on wrong with my wife's car. So both of our cars were kind of getting fixed at the same time. And then we were supposed to serve in the nursery at church the next day. So I hit up the nursery director and say, hey, I don't know if we're going to be able to make it to church, kind of having some car troubles. And the brother just said, hey, we have an extra car, just take the car for the week. It just wasn't even considering that to be a possibility. And it's just, God will provide for his people. So when I'm tempted to be frustrated, or I'm tempted to get angry, I'm tempted to say, I've had enough of this, it's understandable to be frustrated, but I can have peace knowing that if God is bringing me through the situation, that he's going to provide a way for me to get through it as well. So that's something that's been very apparent in the past couple of weeks, and I've had to thank him for that, but also repent for the times where I got frustrated and I let that get the best of me.
Man, that is so good. And I hope that you heard what he says with this. It's looking for the opportunity. That's a lot of what happens in those moments of frustration when things aren't going right. Mm-hmm. Instead of looking at the frustration and everything that could go wrong after that, look for the opportunity to give praise to God and say, thank you, God. I can't believe that we even have a car. I can't believe that we have a car with tires with where we live now. But there is something like truly great about that, is understanding that if we can find joy and peace in every single moment in life, you're going to live a great life. There's going to be a lot of things that you can be excited about, and how great that is that we can pass that along and down to our children. Sean, to kind of wrap things up, where's a good place for people to go and find you, look you up, follow you? Where can people go?
Yes, I'm on social media. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, you can find me under Sean Bacchus, SeanBacchus, as you can see on the screen. And then also I have a website as well, leadtoserveinc.com. Definitely reach out there, take a look at the website. If you're looking for someone that you need to do workshops, if you need a presentation skills course for your organization, definitely feel free to reach out. And there's also leadership training available as well. So you can reach out to me on those platforms. And I'm also on Instagram as well under Lead to Serve Inc. as well. So you guys can find me there.
Awesome. And all of those links will be in the show notes. And for those of you that are looking for a place to connect for community, join the More Than Before community. It's a great opportunity to join me 3 times a week. 2 of those times where I'm teaching some biblical principles early on in the morning, unless you're on the East Coast, then it's a decent hour in the morning. And then one of those days where I jump into leadership and entrepreneurship and business. So it's a great call to jump on, and it costs you nothing to be there. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can also find that in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us. Sean, thank you again for all of your insight and wisdom. And until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.